one.
Touchdown, Stillwater! He scores! Look out. Beautiful! And one! Leroux, he scores! And welcome to this winter recap edition of Ponies All Access. I'm Ted Leroux alongside Mike Peden. And of course, with everything going on in the world right now, we're not sure just how many more times we're going to be able to come into your homes, whether for Ponies All Access highlights or live broadcasts because of the spread of COVID-19 locally and around the world. This could possibly be it for the Stillwater Pony sports seasons.
It could be, but if it is, let's go out with a bang because there was a lot to talk about this winter before everything blew up.
It's going to be a great show, so let's get right into it. The girls basketball team possibly had maybe one of the highest expectations for a returning team of this winter season. They were the defending Section 4 champions in Class 4A and state runner-ups to Hopkins last season. They ended the season against Hopkins just like 1 year ago, and I think Willie Taylor said it best. Maybe this team exceeded a little bit of expectations as well.
Yes, and Liza Carlin mentioned that in the post-game presser. Of course, nobody knew at the time that would be the last game of the season. They were supposed to play in the bronze medal game, but that got called off. But going in, this was a team that brought back a lot, but they did lose Sarah Scalia, who was their all-everything player, the face of Stillwater. And heading into this season, you don't have that centerpiece, that go-to person in the clutch like you did a year ago. So folks are wondering, how would Stillwater look? And when it came to conference play and section play, they dominated the field. They only lost once in conference. They turned their section bracket into a clinic. They didn't have any challenges whatsoever. I think what you saw, though, and this was the case all season, with the rematch against Hopkins that came a year later. They were supposed to play back in January, of course, and then against other high-level 4A teams, at least until the quarterfinals, they were always right there, just couldn't close the deal, whether it was a mental miscue or just something else not going their way. So for the Ponies, it felt like they were just right there. It was a good run, and at the same time, it felt like they lacked maybe a little bit of a punch compared to last year.
There were some new faces on the Stillwater girls basketball team this year, and possibly the most notable one coming into the season was Gianna Carr. But she had more talents than just their talents on the court. Off the court, she had some talents as well.
Yeah, she's been working on that talent for some time and had plenty of time to craft it because she wasn't eligible to play varsity last year. She transferred to Stillwater as a sophomore but had to sit out because she couldn't get a transfer waiver. That being said, she is quite the scribe, and as she told us, it's not a talent many expect when they first meet her.
Me and my anxiety have been fighting for more than 9 years. Most of the time it wins and brings me to tears. It controls my life and I don't get a say because everything always goes its way. I'm stuck in trying to find my way out, but I still can't figure out the layout. No matter how loud I scream, no one will hear me and I can't find the key to set me free. I hold back tears because if I start crying, I won't stop. My anxiety has taken over and is on top. Instead of doing normal teen things, my anxiety leaves me in bed with my thoughts, which makes my body go into knots. Because of my anxiety, I let people down, and it causes me to be alone with no one around.
What you just heard was an excerpt from Gianna Carr's collection of poetry. Her voyage into verses is not a talent many expect.
It's like you do not seem like the type of person, like a basketball player, like a jock, like writing poetry.
The first time I think she ever showed me poetry was just like a joke.
Carr may introduce the subject for laughs, but her writing offers a coping mechanism for her lifelong struggle with anxiety.
In elementary school, it was probably the hardest time for me. There's just so much going on and my head's just like all over the place, so that just caused me to have anxiety because I don't really know what's like going on around me.
Large crowds can be problematic for Carr, which led her to enroll at a small private school her freshman year. A fateful interaction at that school sparked her inner scribe.
It started when me and my friend, people would mix us up and they would call me by her name and vice versa. And so that's when we looked nothing alike. A lot of my poetry is either about myself or maybe something that my friends went through or just literally anybody and like their struggles.
Throughout our whole relationship, she's like opened up and shared more of her poetry with me, and it's like eye-opening because I had never met someone who's like that good of a writer.
Carr moved back to Stillwater as a sophomore and became eligible to play varsity this year. She has a deep history with basketball, and that connection puts all of her concerns at ease.
When I go on the court, it's just everything goes away, and it's just me, my teammates, and the basketball.
She always gets to the ball really quick. She's always on her toes. No one really gets by her.
For the Ponies, Carr is a defensive asset. For those navigating the tricky terrain of mental health, Carr's versification drops a line of encouragement.
I'm fighting this battle that no one can see, and all I want to do is flee. There is no me, but there is a we, because my anxiety has become a part of me. My anxiety decides what I do, so if I make plans, they'll most likely fall through. Only if you knew what I was going through, you would feel this way too. If anyone feels the same way, just know that you're not alone, and one day you'll be strong enough to push it away.
It's not always easy to share a vulnerable part of your identity, but Gianna had no problem sharing her poetry with me, and I was impressed. I was expecting maybe a 5-10 minute conversation. Our interview lasted 40 minutes, so we could do a whole all-access show on Gianna's backstory if we wanted.
And maybe we'll have to do that.
Yes. Well, and given the current situation, Gianna Carr might have time to write an entire book. Yeah. After all, William Shakespeare wrote King Lear while he was under quarantine due to Black Plague, if I'm correct.
The more you know, you are correct.
Exactly. So Gianna Carr, thanks for sharing part of your story with us, and we're looking forward to your future works of poetry in the months and years to come. Moving to boys basketball, Ted, boys basketball, a big shakeup. They lost a lot of seniors. Yep. There were folks wondering if they were even going to win 5 games this year. And even though they weren't one of the front runners in the Suburban East, they put up quite a fight, as you got a chance to see.
Well, here's the thing about boys basketball in the Suburban East Conference in Section 4. It's tough. I mean, when you got Eastridge up there, you got commits going to Wisconsin and other schools. You got Cretin-Durham Hall. Of course, Daniel Oturu played there a couple of years ago, and now he's starring at the University of Minnesota. As we all know, it's tough with those two teams at the top. I mean, last year, I should say, this was probably the best section from top to bottom in Class 4A, and it's tough to kind of make ground when you've got such high competition at the top. But Brady Hannigan and Stillwater, they are getting good players into this system. The star of the show this year was freshman Max Shikenjansky. Now, if you've heard that name before, he came in as a freshman last home football game of the season, I should say, threw a touchdown on his very first pass. He was the JV quarterback during that season. So he's a very talented multi-sport athlete, and at the point guard position, he can do a lot of things. He can get into the lane. He developed an outside shot as this season went along, but this was a team that was in a lot of games. Sure, obviously they didn't win maybe most of their games, but they were competitive, and they always really brought the energy to this game. And Brady is slowly but surely building this program, and they can build around a lot coming in to next season. You've got Sam Shikenjansky, of course, the brother of Max. He's the big guy in the middle, a defensive presence, a rebounding presence that he's going to be able to come back next year. Max Shikenjansky comes back. So the constant build continues, but, I think this is a team that if they continue to ride and they continue to build around Max Shikenjansky as a freshman, I mean, he's got 3 more years on this team. By the time he's a senior, he could be one of the best players in the SEC.
And regardless of the gender, coaches will tell you, talent and coaching, you need a combination of both to make inroads in the sport of basketball especially. And so having Max Shikenjansky provide a fulcrum, that's something that Stillwater boys basketball maybe hasn't had for some time, that could pay big dividends in future seasons. So much like the girls from a few years ago when they were a sub-500 team in Sarah Scalia's early years, maybe Max Shikenjansky can lead a resurgence.
Yeah, and he's definitely that kind of player where he can do that. His ball handling skills, his ability. Early in the season, he wanted to develop a little bit more of an outside shot. And as the season went along, and those last couple of games that we did in February, he was able to knock down that 3-point shot. Tyler Tompkins was another player that could knock down the 3-ball in a game that we did. I believe it was the Woodbury game. He made about 4 or 5 3-pointers in that game, and he was on fire from outside. But they have parts that they can build around, and that's all you ask is you want talent to be able to build around, and I believe Brady has that with this boys basketball team going forward.
And they'll have a lot of time to work on drills and other skill sets with no sports going on right now. A lot of folks will be prepping for AAU. That's not going to happen at least through mid-April. So Shikanjansky might have some time to work in that range.
Oh, absolutely. He'll be hitting them from Scalia range next year.
Oh, I'm sure they would love to see that. Of course, one sport that generates much discussion in this neck of the woods is boys hockey. And Ted, this is a team in transition, but also a team filled with optimism. They split the season series with White Bear Lake and played well with Hill Murray. And so there was some talk that they might play an upset special and break the White Bear Lake Hill Murray supremacy in Section 4-2A. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. White Bear Lake victorious in the section semifinal round this year. But Ted, considering the transition, all the changes that took place, boys hockey did real well.
They did. I mean, this was a year Greg Zanin came in and you could tell the changes. Zanin was a great defenseman, a defensive defenseman that played really hard each and every single night in his NHL days with the Minnesota Wild, Boston Bruins, and others. And you could tell he was going to bring that structure to the team this year, a defensive structure, keep people out of the middle, force them to the side, play disciplined. I think one thing that Stillwater may have struggled with in the past couple of years is penalties. They took a lot of penalties, and maybe they weren't as a defensive team. They kind of flipped that script this year. More defensive and more disciplined under Greg Zanin. I could definitely tell that. This was a team, like you said, they're right there. The Section 4 is difficult every year. When you got White Bear Lake, when you've got Hill Murray, especially how things panned out this season, it's going to be difficult. I mean, they played really well. We had the broadcast of it February 3rd against White Bear Lake at the Rec Center. I mean, they were putting up a lot of goals in that game. I believe 7-4 was the final score. But when you get to playoffs, I mean, White Bear Lake, down the stretch, they weren't playing that great either. Remember, they were number 1 in the state. Then they lose to Irondale, and they go around 500, a little bit below 500 to finish the season. So going into the playoffs, it looked like Stillwater may have had the upper hand on White Bear Lake, but once you get into the sections, the mindset of these players and these coaches completely flips. You know, now we got a chance to head to the X. So things like that will happen. But this was a team, you gotta like how they played this year, and you gotta like the future. One kid I ranted and raved about all year long was Ty Tocito. Big kid, freshman, forward, played on that first line, you know, towards the second half of this season. I really liked what Ty brought to the table. And he was so fun to watch. And for a freshman, and he looked like a junior or a senior out there. So he's great. I mean, Noah Tussey, of course, is going to come back, assuming he doesn't go play juniors for his senior season. So a lot in store here for the Stillwater team, but as we know, I mean, Hill Murray went on to win the state championship. As they went on that big run, White Bear Lake was tough. I mean, White Bear Lake was very close to beating even Hill Murray in the section final. So this section is so tight each and every single year. One bounce of the puck either way can change things.
Now, of course, there's no free agency or trade deadlines to worry about, but what are you most excited about moving forward? Presuming we play hockey at that point.
Yeah, I sure hope so. I'm most excited, like I said, I'm excited about the guys that are coming back. If Noah Tussey is on this team as a senior, you got to like them. They're going to be right there. White Bear Lake, good amount of seniors on that team. You look at Hill Murray, Remington Keppel was a senior, Charlie Strobel was a senior. Both of those guys, I know one of them at least will be playing college hockey. I expect the other one at some point to be playing college hockey. So Hill Murray has been kind of building up to this season when guys like Strobel and Keppel were seniors. So, like you say, graduation, the great equalizer, it may work in Stillwater's favor. You know, you bring back guys like Tocito, you bring back guys like Tussey. But for the second straight year, you had a senior in net. So they're going to have to figure out the goaltender situation and who is going to be in net next season. As we know in the game of hockey, college, high school, pro, it doesn't matter. You have a hot goaltender, you're going to be able to win. That's exactly what happened with Hill Murray. Remington Keppel was a finalist for the goaltender of the year, and they're hoisting the AA state championship trophy. So if they can figure out what's happening in net, they could be going to the X next year.
We'll see what happens. Now, a team that had built up for a potential run was Stillwater girls hockey, a big senior class. They got a little bit better each year, and they were able to make it to the section finals. And considering how Hill Murray has dominated that series, even though Hill Murray got the win, it wasn't the blowout that I think some folks thought it would be. Ted, for girls hockey, I know they've had maybe some rougher instances of building up the program, but coming together this year, they played real well and made a fight of it all the way to the end.
They have had a lot of youth in the past couple of years, a lot of youth. And you talk to anybody around the girls hockey program, you say, well, our youth program is one of the best in the state right now, and that's why these young players are playing at varsity so quickly, because they're really good players. There's no doubt about that. But although you're good coming out of youth hockey as 7th grader, 8th grader, once you transition to varsity hockey, and like you said, you're playing against Hill Murray. I mean, last year, remember when they went up against White Bear Lake and Calla Frank, who's now the goaltender at Minnesota State for the Mavericks, over there down in Mankato. It's tough when you make that transition from youth to varsity hockey at such a young age. That's a big jump. And you saw that over the last couple of years, but they kept on getting better. Those last couple of years with Lee Gillespie, of course, Lee steps down. Mira Jalusu comes in. She does a phenomenal job. And she did an awesome job with these kids. They ranted and raved. They really, they really accepted what she was teaching, and they really meshed with her really well. And you can tell she's implementing the system that's going to work here for, I think, a long time in the St. Croix Valley. And they were right there. This was a team. Oh, they were so fun to watch. Oh, each and every single game. Lauren Enan, Elena Tansky, who's going to be playing college hockey, and we're going to have a story about her in a minute. Josie St. Martin, the 8th grader, who won the Sue Ring Jarvie Award as the best youth player in the state. Last year, she came in and she puts up over 30 points. So they had a lot of offensive firepower. They kind of went Roski and Kronk, kind of rotated a little bit in net this year. I think a lot of people were aiming for that trip to the X, possibly. I mean, these seniors will be missed. Like you said, Lauren Enan will graduate. Tansky will graduate. They've put in a lot of time. They've played a lot of years in this program. They came up just short. But this program still has a great youth program. Eric St. Martin, the dad of Josie, is the youth director in the girls hockey program. He's done a phenomenal job. They've all done a phenomenal job. And girls, although they came up just short, the future is very, very bright.
And speaking of that future, as you mentioned, Josie St. Martin figures to play a big part in that. Ted, what impressed you most about this 8th grade sensation?
Well, what impressed me was what impressed a lot of her teammates, and it was that hard slap shot of hers, but it's not just that hard slap shot, it's her entire game that's impressing her teammates and a lot of people around the state.
There's a shot! 2-0 Stillwater. First goal of the career of 8th grader Josie St. Martin.
There were a lot of things to love when it came to Josie St. Martin's first season of varsity hockey. Her passing.
St. Martin middle of the rink, and she skates it through. 2-on-1. Centering pass and a beauty. Wow. Score!
Her speed. But one thing in particular stands out.
Her slap shots. She loves her clap bombs.
Probably one of the hardest shots on the team, which is insane.
St. Martin, bam. Oh man!
But there's a little more to it than that.
She has a hard shot, but her work ethic is unbelievable, and she's just a great player all the way around.
Josie tallied 33 points in her 8th grade season, but before she scored her first, her teammates knew she belonged with the best Stillwater has to offer.
She's super fast and she brings a lot to the table. She's not selfish. She moves the puck whenever, but also she knows when to do what. She knows when to take it or pass it.
You know, I love playing with Josie. She came into this year with a lot of confidence. She's a young player, but when you watch her on the ice, she doesn't seem as young as she actually is.
I feel like our first game, I don't know, she just came in right away and was confident. I know when I was younger, I was a little bit more timid and was scared to do this and that, but she just knows what to do and she's confident about it, and it's just crazy to see that she can be that good and be that young.
Seniors Lauren Enan and Elena Tansky are part of a senior group that has elevated Stillwater girls hockey to one of their best seasons in years. But for Josie, it's their leadership that helped ease the transition into high school hockey.
I was pretty nervous the first couple of weeks, but then as I got used to it, I got to know the girls better, all welcoming of me, and I got to be way more comfortable with them. They talked to me a lot. They were really supportive, always offering me car rides if my parents couldn't drive me places. They were all supportive of me, always cheering me on the bench. It's really all the seniors, great leaders, all of them.
Reporting for Ponies All Access, I'm Ted Leroux.
Although the girls hockey team came up just short in their bid for a state tournament appearance, there were others that did make it to state tournaments, and that team being the wrestling team. Although, Mike, they did face off with Shakopee coming up second, just like they did last year in the state final, unfortunately coming up short. This was a team that was loaded from top to bottom with great wrestlers, 4 individual state champions. This is a program that is really, really good. Tim Hartung has this program being one of the best in maybe not only the winter season, but overall on campus at Stillwater.
And it's impressive for a program that had never reached a state final to make it 2 years in a row. Where they seem to struggle are the lower weight classes where you've got some younger faces on that team. So that's something they may want to look at if they want to hang with the likes of Shakopee. But the coaches are telling me this is a team that was dealing with some injuries midway through the season. So they were a late surprise because when you don't get a chance to compete, you don't have that data to go off of. So that's one reason why they got the 3 seed, even though they took care of St. Michael Albertville handily in the state semifinal round. Their strength is the middle classes, as you alluded to, 4 individual state champions. Reed Ballantyne, Trey Cruzy, Hunter Leiden, Roman Rogotsky, and all 4 of them dominated, or at least played well, in their matches throughout the team tournament. And when you have a strong middle like that, that allowed Stillwater to make up early deficits against Waconia and St. Michael Albertville in the first 2 rounds. Again, they may want to shore up the younger weight classes moving forward. Of course, as we noted earlier, that's not easy to do. You don't have free agency or trades. You can't just move pieces around. You don't have a salary cap. You're right. But it was a lot of fun to watch. I know, our wrestling coverage maybe wasn't as extensive as a year ago, but a full day at the Axe is becoming an annual ritual. And when you see the support for both Stillwater and Shakopee, those 3A finals get a lot of faces in the crowd. So real cool to see, and the precedent, the tradition that Stillwater is forming here over these last couple of years, that's going to keep feeding to the rest of the team. I remember last year with one of the wrestlers saying, hey, this was real cool that we got a silver medal and made it this far. That enthusiasm seems to be spreading. So we'll see what happens next season. Again, a lot of unknowns to answer, but I've got a feeling Stillwater Wrestling will be one of those teams we'll have to make state tournament plans for.
Exactly. Now let's talk about Reed Ballantyne. 4 straight state championships at 132. That is unbelievable. I'm not sure if he's been at 132 his entire time, but at least this year he was at the 132 weight class. He's going to go for 5 next season. That's unprecedented. He, I think, has definitely left a mark and a lasting legacy on this program.
Yes, not many win 5. There's only one who has won 6 in a row. He came from Apple Valley, of course, before Shakopee took over the crown there in that section. But it's rare for someone to dominate like he has. So to win 4 in a row is impressive, and the chance to make it 5 in a row and go down as one of the most decorated wrestlers in Stillwater history, I've got a feeling he will be a favorite, whether it's 132 or one of the adjacent classes, to pick up another individual state championship. And on the subject of powerhouses, Ted, boys swimming and diving, Brian Luke, one of the powerhouse programs in the state, and that was no different this year.
Oh, they're just back to their old tricks. Whether it's the girls or the boys, the swim and dive programs are they're at the top when it comes to programs here at Stillwater Area High School. I think when it comes to this boys team this winter, Josiah Fick on the diving board was unbelievable. He went and won the state diving championship in Minneapolis in AA. Aiden Bloomquist and others were great for this team, but definitely the big highlight of this team was Josiah Fick winning that state diving championship. Other sports that were able to kind of do a few things. How about Alpine? Girls and boys section champions, both with runner-ups there. So both of those had a good season. Gymnastics maybe didn't have the season they were looking for that they've had the past couple of years.
Well, they did lose a lot of seniors to graduation, and just ran up against some other powerhouses, Matamidi. I know East Ridge did well, but they've got some younger talent, Nora Bates in particular. I remember she was part of that story we did last year, and she'll be one of those faces to keep an eye on. A multi-sport athlete, too, a gymnastics lacrosse crossover, and unfortunately, we may not get a chance to see the spring sports. And I know I'm bummed in particular, if I may vent for a little bit, because I was looking forward to another season. With Annie McGuire having that tremendous junior season, and she might have her senior or her entire career cut short, along with a lot of other athletes.
And if I can quick interrupt you for a moment as we're kind of quickly wrapping things up here. That boys lacrosse team, remember, they were the #1 seed in that section for last year, got upset by Matamidi in the semifinals. A lot of teams were maybe projecting them to go to the state championship. Now the seniors on that team might not get another shot, and then who knows what the future of that program is. That's one that I'm looking at least for the spring.
Right, they were ranked second in the states going into the playoffs last year, and when you looked at all the pieces coming back, and baseball and softball too. Allison Benning committed to Oregon. Now she'll be a junior, so she could at least salvage a senior season if we're not able to play this year, but all of those pieces, baseball was going to look a lot different without their pitchers, but most of that softball team that have gone to state the last couple of years, they were all going to come back. And on the track, Alexis Pratt, one of the speediest figures around, did real well in true team and state and gets all of her relay teams, whatever she's in, she finds a way to get her teams to run deep. So we'll see what happens, and maybe we get through this sooner than some forecasts are suggesting. But I know for you and I, this is kind of a downer because we were looking forward to so much excitement. The spring sports season seems to be one of our busiest. And you and I, well, we might have to run some simulations or take up esports. If there are any Stillwater athletes involved in esports, feel free to tell us, because that might be our future of storytelling for the time being.
So make sure you stay tuned to our social media. We'll give you an update as to what is exactly happening with spring sports, if spring sports indeed will happen. It was scheduled to have 2 live girls and boys lacrosse games, 2 of each, on television and streaming online, and then we were going to have tape delayed coverage of boys or of baseball and softball. But if those do not happen, we're going to have a full slate for you in the fall. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But we're going to have that information on social media and our website, vactv.org. This was fun again, Mike, if this is another great season, if this is indeed the end. But make sure, stay tuned to our social media channels. For Mike Peden, I'm Ted Leroux. Thanks for watching Ponies All Access.
He scores!